Well, hi and welcome to DVD 3. Well, we've had quite a journey together. You know, when we think about it, we've broken down the market maker's business model. We've looked at the accumulation, the manipulation, the profit release. You might say that we've got all the theory nailed down. Now, of course, we've done some live trading in between this. Of course, we've shown, you know, making money and how this thing works. But now we're getting to the stage where we really need to do a lot more chart work. That is, we need to get into the market, observe the market. We need to look at how things are playing out, and we need to be able to look at a chart in a certain way that says, okay, we can see this accumulation, we can see the manipulation, and we can get ready and then trade obviously the profit release. And of course there are trading opportunities as well within the manipulation, which I showed you at the earlier stage of the videos when we sort of kicked off, because I wanted to do the acid test, as it were, and get in there and get some results for you. So I want to say, when we're looking at now, we're getting into the sharp end, as it were, we've got to make those trading decisions. And what I've done is I've marked up this sheet here with the things that I need you to go through. You know, these are the things that I go through, these are the things that you need to go through. Now, I realise some of this text is a little bit small, so you might not be able to see this, but I'll put it up at the end and I'll zoom out and make it nice and big for you so you can actually see this and take some notes. So I've marked up here open trading questions. This is really opening questions. What do we need to see, or what do we need to ask ourselves before we want to actually get into the market live with our money? Because at the end of the day, it's all very good paper trading and, you know, looking at charts and saying, okay, well, I could have bought here, could have sold there. But at the end of the day, what this comes down to is your ability to make trading decisions that produce profit. If you can't do that, if you can't do that in the real world, then all this is really academic. It's not really any value to you at all, other than understanding something. But if you're looking for a financial, obviously, gain, then you need to understand this and you need to be able to act on that information. So the first question that I ask myself, and I want you to ask yourself, is, you know, you look at an intent block, you see the intent block, you see the red intent block, or you see a green intent block appear, and you ask yourself immediately, is this true or false? Because we know now that if it's true, we can make money from this. This is great. We also know if it's false, we can make money from it. And sometimes we actually make more money from a false move. But we need to know, is it true or false? So the next question I want to do is look, is there any, as soon as I see the intent block, what I want to ask is there any preceding information that will validate this block as being true or false? Now I've only put just validate up here because I don't need to say whether it's true or false, because we're looking for validation, either true or false. So any preceding information that will validate this for me, that this is a true or a false intent block. And the things that I would then ask, a subset of questions I would ask about this, is I would ask, is there a preceding accumulation area? If I can see clearly there is an accumulation area, so the market's gone up a little bit or down a little bit, and it's come to this accumulation area that we can see, and then we have an intent block in either direction, we can say that's a good foundation. We can see where it's come from, and we can see what the intent block is highly likely to be showing us. Okay, so that's a great first question there. The next question, is there a continuation of an earlier intent block? Okay, so in other words, if we've seen an intent block higher up and the market's gone off a little bit, so down, let's suppose this is a red intent block, we've seen the market go down a little bit, you know, and then we've seen another intent block down. Is this just a continuation? Is this showing us, so is that more evidence that leans back to saying that this one is a genuine true intent block? And the third thing is waning beliefs. Now we're going to be looking at waning beliefs on the chart today, in a few moments actually, but as briefly, waning beliefs, let's just have a little talk about that. When we're looking at a pat chart, waning beliefs are something that we want to identify as a lack of interest, a waning set of beliefs about, say, a price going higher, or a waning set of beliefs about the market going lower. Now that will be shown in pat by yellow bars. Now, not individual bars, we're looking at successive yellow bars, or maybe one yellow bar after a blue. And again, I will explain this in great detail when we get onto the chart, because remember, we're never looking at one thing in pat. We're always looking at the story. We're looking to get the unfolding story. Where is the market maker in their business model? And that's never going to be released by one that information never released to us by one single bar, as it were. Sometimes it may look like it is, and you could argue maybe it is, but it's not. It's always the culmination of certain things coming together. Okay, so waning beliefs. All right, so that's the first thing that I'm going to look as regard preceding information to seeing that intent block. The next thing I'm going to look at, is there any post information that would validate? In other words, you might see the block, you might see the market start to move away. So is there a continuation of direction? Or has there been a continuation of direction of a preceding intent block? It's in the same direction as the one we're looking at now. So is there a continuation? How is the market reacting after the intent block appears? How is the market reacting? Where are the beliefs going after that intent block appears? The next thing is retrace and jump bar. Now again, we haven't covered this in great detail, but I'm going to get on the chart soon and we're going to be looking at this, but I wanted you to have this list first before we actually get into the charts and start looking directly at the chart what we're going to be doing. So retrace and jump bar. So when I talk about a retrace, let's suppose we have a red intent block. That's obviously indicative that the market makers are showing an intent of a downward moving. Do we then see a retrace up? Okay, so the market actually comes back up after that intent block, and then we see the jump bar down. Okay, so have we seen that? Has that occurred after this intent? Because if it has, that's a fantastic, great indicator. It's telling us that really, there was maybe a rising back up, a waning, which we'll have a look at, I'll say in a minute, and then we get this jump bar away. That's great information as well. And the third thing, which we haven't looked at all, which is a pivot. Now, the reason I've put this in here now is because, basically I want to cover this directly when we get back over onto the charts. But I want you to not get your head caught up around the word pivot, meaning anything in a traditional chart, like pivot points. It's a common market maker tool. Instantly I called it a market maker tool there. I was going to say it was a common indicator or thing you'll find in a charting package, and that's true, that you will. Pivot points are, people will talk all about pivot points and all this sort of stuff, and they're great things after the event, but what I'm saying is, pivot points, we're going to be looking at those, but we're looking at the pat pivot, which is very different to a pivot point, because we're not trading pivot points and we're not using that as a market maker tool. If you're trading pivot points currently on traditional software with a traditional market maker software, you are trading one of the market makers tools again, which will be these pivots. Okay, so that's the open trading questions, and then the all important thing is closing questions. I've said this so many times, any fool can get into a market. All you've got to do is click a button, pick up the phone, your broker, make a decision to buy. Any fool can do that. It's an easy process to do. The real skill in trading involves where you get out, because where you get out is where you either lose money or make money. So where you get out is much more important, having that skill to get out. And we have specific things that we do, which again we're going to be looking at today directly on the charts. Okay, so closing questions. Now I haven't got a list after this, and the reason I haven't got a list, because when you think about it, this can be sort of reversed. All of this about here can be reversed. So if we're currently short in the market, that is, we've sold the market on the red intent block, and then we get a green intent block, we've got to go through this same process here to tell us, is this the time to close this trade? Now that's if providing we haven't reached the target that we want to reach to, which again we're going to get about that. So, and then finally that brings us down to targets. Okay, and that is something again is so important, and what we're going to look at today. We have a tool in Pat that will give us these targets, a highly accurate tool, and so we can take out our pips, profit as it were, at predetermined levels. Now, just before we get over onto the chart, I actually took a trade last night that I wanted to show you how that sort of trade worked out. And I took the trade went off, and actually it wasn't a very good position in terms of it. Everything was right for the trade. It went off right, and it went straight away in the money. But then the belief bar started to move above the intent bar, and as the market started to move up, I wasn't actually looking at the screen, and it sort of got into an uncomfortable position in so much that it started to move above the red intent bar. But I was sort of committed to the trade at that point, and I believed it would not go above the high of the day, which it didn't. It didn't get above that. Well, actually it did 1 pip, but it didn't stop me out. And then the market went off, and then when I say it went off, I've got to stop using these terms until you know. When I say when the market goes off, I mean in this case it came away from the top, started going down and started getting into the money. But by the time I was here in New Zealand, I had to go to bed, I had to leave the trade open, and so I went off to bed and left the trade open, anticipating where I would get out in the morning. Now, what I'd done was I actually made a mistake on where I put my exit. So instead of using the tool, which I'm going to show you now, I'd actually made a mistake. I've been tired or whatever, and I didn't put the exit in where I wanted to come out. Now, I got up this morning, goes to the screen, and there, sure enough, the market had come right back off, right down to my target, and would have taken me out for a nice 42 pips profit. Not a huge, great win, but nevertheless, it was a good win. It was 42 pips. Everything kicked in, and that was it. But what actually happened was the market had gone down to where I would have come out and had gone back up, and I hadn't been triggered out. In other words, my automated order was not put in correctly, so I didn't get moved out. So what I did was because now the markets are back above here a little bit, so I've not got my 42 pips. I haven't closed the trade, and the market's now come back away from my exit target again, which we'll look at in a moment. So now all I can do is move my stop down really, and hopefully the market will go back down to my original limit exit, and there I'll get my 42 pips. But what actually happened was, which is something I want you to be so cautious of, is as I moved my stop down, the market went back up, stopped me out, and I got 22 pips instead of 42 pips, purely because I didn't trade to the target and automate that as I normally do. And the reason I've told you this and explained this to you is because I hear so many people say that use a trailing stop, so in other words the market's going down like this and you trail a stop behind it so far. The question is always, how much do you trail this behind? Because in hindsight it all looks very good when markets are going hundreds and hundreds of pips and you're trailing it down behind, but eventually that market will trace, and those pips, whatever your trailing stop is, will gradually be taken back on there. Whereas if you're trading to a target, the market comes down, you trade to a target, you close off, and at that point there you've got a date, and then you look then for a re-entry into the market, which is exactly what I profess that you do. Okay, well that's it now for this section. Let's get over back onto the charts, have a look at how that trade particularly played out, and then we're going to go through all these trading questions. We're going to look at these, we're going to find the intent bars, we're going to ask these questions that we've gone through here, and then we're going to see how the market plays out after that. So I'll catch up with you right over. Well, hi and welcome back to Screenside. Okay, so now comes the exciting stuff really. Now we get to put all the market maker's business model into activity, into action. We get to see it all play out for live. We're looking at live charts, and we're going to be reading this whole business model as it wraps out, and that's very, very exciting stuff. So let's get on with it and make a start now. Now remember, we looked at the intent block, and we're going to look at this directly onto the screen in a moment. Got the intent block. A couple of things we need to think about when we see that intent block. What are the questions we need to ask? One, is it true intent or is it false intent? Either way we can make money from it, remember, but obviously one's going to go one way and one's going to go the other, so we need to be aware of that as best we can. So we need to ask those questions, and the questions are, is this current intent bar a continuation of a preceding one? So let's say we've already got a green one, or we've already got a red one. Is this next red one or green one the same as the preceding one? So is it really a continuation type of move? The next thing we need to ask ourselves is there any accumulation just prior to it? If there's accumulation just prior, that's a great indication that this could be a genuine sort of kick-off from here, a good significant move. Another thing we need to ask is there any waning imminently? So do we see a waning of the market just prior? So an example, if we see a green, just prior to that, was there accumulation and was there some waning? In other words, was there a lack of desire, if you like, push it down? Were the market makers showing their lack of desire to take the market any lower? Okay, so that's the sort of pre-questions we need to ask. And there's just one more question actually, which is linked to the pivots, but we'll get to that in a moment, because the pivots you haven't really seen yet until I'm actually going to show you those in a moment. And then the next set of questions we ask is, after we've seen the intent, and maybe we're in the intent block, and maybe we're in that trade, what are some post clues? What are some post clues? What's happened after that? And again, we ask ourselves, is there a continuation occurring? So are we getting a genuine continuation? Let's example as a green, is it going to continue on up? Also, we look at the retrace. So if we get the green and then we see the market come over and then start to retrace, Are we seeing that? And then are we seeing a jump bar out of there? So all these things, so that the pre intent block and then the post intent block gives us great information whether we're going to hold that trade for a longer period of time and obviously get the maximum number of pips out of it. And then there's also the pivot line, which we're going to look at in a moment. Okay, so let's now get onto the chart and have a look directly at this and talk our way through this period from here. Okay, let's get some markers up for this chart and start talking you through this. Now, the first thing I want to draw your attention to are these three belief bars here, these three successive belief bars here. Now, you might be thinking, okay, well, what about the intent block here? Shouldn't we be looking at that? Well, the answer is yes, we should. But what I want you to do is to be thinking about anticipating where an intent block is going to appear. Now, we haven't sort of really talked about that much, but when you think about this, if we've got some, if we start to look at, intent bars, and then we say, okay, was there any preceding information, like an accumulation area, like a continuation, or like some waning? If there's anything preceding that, it validates that. So why not be looking for that accumulation? Why not be looking for the continuation or the waning all the time prior to any appearance of an intent block? Now, in this example here, this raises some questions for me at this stage, and the questions I ask is this: if I can clearly see that here is a blue belief bar and here is another blue belief bar, I can immediately, Pat is telling me that there is an increase in beliefs, there is an increase in activity, and this market is driving down. In other words, it's going down. So there's lots of activity going on and the market's falling down in price. Gradually we can see lower and lower beliefs. But then down at the bottom here we suddenly see a yellow. Nothing in that, doesn't really stand out. It's okay, it's nothing really important. But then we see yet another yellow and then another yellow. So clearly we can see that there's interest is losing. What's going on here? There's certainly some waning of beliefs here. Is this waning to the beliefs of the downside? And then I see we get a jump bar up. Now I've got to ask myself this question. In order for the market to rise up, in other words to give a jump bar up, contained within these two belief bars here, as the market came down, there must have been some buying, some accumulation of some buying, because that is the only way in which that market would then rise up from here on very little activity. So that area is my first sort of, if you think, that's my first sort of a bit of analysis, and it's that complete area, it's that little story contained within that box that I've just drawn on there now, is there's something that interests me. Now let's just get our screen door off of there and go back to where we were. Now then we get the intent block, the nice green intent block there. Now if we've already been doing our homework, we will already be aware of this. We'll already be aware of the jump bar here. So once we see this and we see this activity coming in, we are ready to trade. We are aware of what's going to happen. We are aware that this is highly likely to be a valid intent block, and the market is highly likely to start going up from here in this direction. Okay, now is the time to introduce the concept of the pivots. Now if I just point down to here, you can see this red bar here. Now this is indicating a type of pivot area, not a standard type of pivot area, but it's just indicating a particular type of market activity. In other words, the market makers are engaging in some activity at this stage, and this has been able to be picked up. Now I hasten to add, these red bars and green bars, you can see another one down here, these bars will not appear until at least 3 bars later. In other words, this red will not appear until this bar has completely finished. So in other words, as soon as this bar starts, the 3 bar sequence, if a certain set of criteria occurs within those 3 bars, then Pat will paint this bar red. So do not think that this bar appears on that bar and that's it. We're always going to have to wait for that those sequence of events to occur. Now, I know they look very good in hindsight, they look immediately if the market goes down from there, but that's not the way that these are used. We're looking for, like I say, for a degree of something to happen, and when that happens, then we pack it up, and then we're looking to happen what goes on later on. Now, what I'm not interested in, let's just get rid of the markers at the moment. What we're not interested in is the actual tip of the bar here. In this case, the tip of the red, or in this case, the tip of the green. Now, traditionally, we'd be thinking that when you see a red bar like this, let's run into resistance at the high price. In this case, you can clearly see that it has. It was just by looking through here, you can see through there the market is running to resistance. And like I say, that's quite an important thing. But really, we've got much better information than that. So what I want you to do is to drop your mind down, or drop your eyes down to this second point down here. You can see the second belief bar after the red, and here we have the second belief bar after the green. Okay, now what Pat actually does for you is Pat draws a line in when it sees these. Now you can't see these at the moment because it will only draw in the last X number. Now we can set that. You can maybe have 4 or 6, the last 4 or 6. It's not really important. You can set that specifically how you want to set it. But basically, I'll draw a line in here so you can see what's going on and how it will happen. What you would see as a result of Pat would see that bar, and then when it closed off, it would draw a horizontal line in for you like that, and that will continue on right through to the edge of the live chart. Now, I'm going to put one up in a moment so you can see what's going to happen after that, and we're going to use this one over here. We're going to put a line through that and then go from there, so you can see how that plays out later on. But going back down to our turn, going back down to our intent block down here, look at the just here, we can see we've got the green on here as well. I'm now going to put another line through here. Now remember, you would have had this line from this point, so you would have been aware of that line at this time. So none of this to the right, none of this to the right would have actually occurred yet, nothing at all. You'd been aware of that at that point there. And you would have clearly observed the market coming down through this period where we saw the waning beliefs, and you would have seen the market start to lift back up. You would observe the market come back up exactly to this area. And that's important information, because once you see that happens, what happens after? Notice we get a jump bar down. There is actually another selling opportunity at that point to actually carry on down. Now we know the market didn't go down much farther after that. That's not the issue, because the market could have gone further on. But what I'm showing you really is how Pat is able to enable you to then map out the market in terms of where those turns and where the resistance points are coming in. So when we put all this information together, you can then see that later on the market actually lifts up and completely goes through this line that Pat would have drawn in for you, and then the market gets away into its up move. Once again, we get our drop back, and then we get our jump bar, and then the whole move settles off into the up move. And that's the type of typical scenario. Now I know that may seem a lot to you. We look at all those arrows, it may seem a lot to you, but believe me, it's not. Once you're actually starting to look at this and you're going forward from the live edge, it's actually easier to do this at the live edge of the chart than it is to do this historically. Personally, I'm never very comfortable showing historic type of trading because it's very difficult for me to analyze it, whereas when I'm seeing it live playing out and I can see the live price moving around, I can see everything going on, I see what's developing, it's much easier to read a market. But of course we have to do a bit of historic stuff to give you a foundation upon where we're going. Now just before we move off to the right of the chart, let's just pop a few more of these lines on so that you can get a better idea of how this is effective these lines will be. Remember, Pat does this automatically for you. You do not have to draw these lines at all. This comes automatically, and Pat will pop these lines on for you. So when this occurred here, so when that line was drawn, the line would have been drawn just after the end of the box that I've drawn there. That's where it will be drawn. So none of this to the right here was visible. None of this at all. You could not see any of that at all. Did not even exist. Now what you'll notice is, if I just get rid of those and then put the line back on, what you'll notice is that, let's just get the line back on there so you can see how the market gets back up to this area here. When the market gets back up to there, you can see once again we get the drop down, and then we actually get a second drop down after it lifts again. All excellent trading information to allow us to stay with the trade. We've already had the red intent block over here. So all this is wonderful added information for you to know how to read this. And remember, we don't want to be looking at a long situation here. We're not looking to trade long out of there. Oh, there are small opportunities, but they're not really things that you want to be doing, because you're really going against the market maker's intent. And you can also see that there was another one over here as well, which actually had the same effect. Pretty much the market comes up, is going up underneath it all the time, hitting up underneath this line, and then eventually we see the market break away, which it did over here as well. Okay, so now let's look at the let's get rid of those. Let's get our line back on so we can have a look on there. Let's get our line on, and now if you can see from here we've got the red here, so we would then be looking at the, let's get the arrow on, that's better. We've got the red here, so we'd be then looking, Pat would now be drawing us a line from here and extending it forward. Okay, so we'll just put a little mark on that so you can see now, and then we'll move the chart forward so that you can then see how the market plays out. Okay, so here we are then, and this is what Pat software would be doing for you. It would be drawing this line through here. Now remember, at this point you don't see any of this market's not even here, so as the market comes up you're already being pre-warned of where this market is highly likely to turn from. Now do not forget, we've also got this one down here, so Pat will also have been extending automatically this line through here. Now hopefully already you've started to observe something. You can see the market coming off down after these intent blocks through here, and then you're asking yourself, where this market likely to stop, likely to turn. Pat's already drawn in that level for you. As the market starts to go up, you're thinking, how far is this market likely to go back against this intent block? Pat has already drawn this line in for you automatically. You do not have to do any of this. All you have to do is observe. Pat will automatically be doing this for you. Now, I actually sold the market last night on here, which is actually a trade that worked out okay. Although I did get caught in this trade, and the trade did go out of the money quite a bit, I was quite confident of holding the trade, because obviously I'd got these down intent blocks here, and I could see the market maker's ultimate intent. But the market did go higher than this, as we'll now see as we go forward. Okay, as you can see, I've just moved the chart forward, and now if we go back to our marker and put a marker on here, in a moment we'll see Pat will be doing this live for us, so we can see this anyway. Actually, I've had an idea. If I turn off the screen drawer and I actually extend the numbers of alerts, that it's set the old number of alerts, and I've currently got 4 in there. If I just put 6 in there, then it may well draw that. There we go. It's actually drawn. It's actually drawn this one up here. So let's make that 8. Like I say, you wouldn't want to have these on while you're trading too many, because obviously they would be interfering. There'd be a lot too many lines on there. That's why you don't have too many historic lines on. But it hasn't actually shown this one up, so we'll put a line on so that you can see that anyway. Okay, so this is where the line would have come forward from at the time, and you can see how the market came back up to this area here and here and yet again. Now eventually, I was currently shorting here. I'd sold the market at this point, and then I saw the market go up through this point here. And I thought, well, the market's highly likely to go through this top and punch out any stops and then go down. Why? Because we've still got the intent blocks down here. Although the moment the belief bar really sort of got above this one here, then things could have changed completely from that point on. Absolutely completely. But I was still in the trade. I was already short. And I didn't make a great deal of pips out of it, as I shall show you at the end, and you'll see why. But nevertheless, I was staying with that trade. Okay, so let's now move forward a little bit more. Okay, what I'm going to do now is just go back to the options and set the old number of alerts back down to 4, because that's a much more manageable level of seeing the last 4, as it were, on there. Now, I know it's not showing the last 4 on here. That's because we're not quite at the right live edge of the chart yet, but you will eventually see the last 4 when we get to the live price. Okay, so we've got our intent blocks. We can see that the intent is down this market, and we get yet another line put through, and also we get a line which you can't see, which would have obviously been on at through this one here. That would have gone through there. Actually, in fact, I do apologise about this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back, and I'm going to put that back up to there so that I can carry these forward, because it's going to be a lot better way to show you. Let's just try 6 in there and see if it draws one from there. Yep, okay, there we go. We can see the red now on this bar here, and you can see that line extending forward. Okay, so at this point there, we've got our green. We can see once again the market comes away from this point here and from this point here. And they're really messing around, but we've got our intent, remember, to our downside. And then what do we see if we just go forward? Let's just go forward a little bit by bit. Here you can see the market's still coming off of the red here. Again, this is the side that we're interested in. There we go. Okay, and now we can see the market lifts up through here. We're anticipating there's likely to be a retrace, but again, we're only looking at the selling this market. So we've had several selling opportunities through it as the market's lifted back up to the pivot area, and then the market gets into the down move. Okay, now this video, this clip we've talked through has been about coming up for 20 minutes, so it's quite some time it's taken me to get through this. And I hasten to add, this happens quite quickly once you know what you're doing, and you can go through these and look at the intent blocks and look at these individual indicators. Then you won't find it anywhere near as complicated as what it may seem at this stage. Now, something I'd just quickly like to finish up on this section before we go back and have a look at some other examples. I want to bring your attention to the 90 pips tool here and explain to you that this is what generally we are trading for. This is the range that we're looking for. This is the safest range. This is the amount. 90 pips is a very good target for us to be trading for. Now, it'll be quite rare, obviously, we get in right at the 90 pips. That's not likely going to happen very often. But we're really interested in taking out the belly part of the move. Now, what I mean by the belly part of the move is if we can get the main portion of this move each time, then that's a significant number of pips taken in a very, very safe environment. And remember, we've got this against the backdrop of this. We could see that this intent bar here was immediately false. This was going against, basically wasn't going against. It was first off, it was going against the intent here, but immediately you can see that the next bar was down, as it were. Market lifted up and then gave us another jump bar down. Well, hi and welcome back to some more screen work. Now, what I'd like to talk to you about now is noise. Not a noise that we hear ringing away in our ears, whatever, but basically noise on a visual scale. And I call it's like a noisy chart. It's when you look at a chart and you have a lot of information going on, or a lot of things going on in there, and it actually becomes very noisy. Now, the problem with this for a trader is that you can become distracted. If you've got too many things to look at, you can be focusing on one thing to the detriment of another. You can be focusing on many things to the detriment of everything. You can be focusing on everything to the detriment of one little tiny thing there that you could have picked up on that would have given you the whole answer to exactly where in the market maker's business model the actual market currently was. So noise is a very important thing for you to have as a consideration, to certainly consider it, and to consider about getting rid of all the noise you can, all that visual noise and in many cases clutter from your chart. Now, currently, so far, I've introduced you to the floating zone, which is the 3 yellow lines. I've set it up the 3 yellow lines on this chart here. And I've also introduced you to the grid. Now let's just have a look, just to point these up now so you can recall where these are. So basically, 3 yellow lines that we talked about down here. You can see we have the dashed and the solid and then the dash. So that's the 3 lines that we talked about, being the floating zone 2. And we also talked about having this grid. You can see the grid just in the background there, these grid lines set up. And we talked about how that enables us to pick up and detect the accumulation. You can see I'm just going to highlight that up for you there. We can see the accumulation, where that gets through those periods. We can see that it picks up there, And just by doing that, it enables us to draw our eye in, if you like, or focus in on what we want to do. We can actually see, incidentally, we're getting some more as the market's going live through there as well. So that's quite interesting as well. Okay, so I'm just going to turn those indicators off now for a moment. Sorry, turn those markers off for a moment. And then I want you to look back again at the screen. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn off the floating zone 2. Nice and simple. Go up there, uncheck floating zone 2. Now, immediately, hopefully what you can see is this chart has become less noisy. There's less going on. But really, there's the same amount of information going on. The pure information that we need, it's there. It's exactly where it was originally. So go back to our drawing tools, and are we able now to still see this? Are we, can we still pick out this accumulation? Can we still see that? And the answer is yes, we can. We don't actually need that indicator or that floating zone on actually telling us about this. We can see what it is. We can observe it. So in my way of thinking, this is a lot clearer by taking that information off. Okay, so what about the grid? Well, when we look at the grid, you can see that it's very much in the background. You can see the lines here, and this very, very much in the background. It's sort of hidden behind. So, okay, you could leave that on if you wanted to. Let's just turn it off and see what it looks like when we turn it off. Show extended zone, you can see we turn it off, and you can see it gets rid of it, but it doesn't actually take off that much noise. So I think probably when you're starting out, you might want to keep that on and keep as soon as you can, turn off the floating zone 2, because like I say, less in our case is more. Less is more information, more of the pertinent information that we need to trade at that given point in time. Okay, so that's our noise lesson. Now, just incidentally on that, so as I'm talking about that, there are options in PAT where you can put on, as you can see, you can put on different things. You can show the floating zone 1, you can show floating zone 2, which you can set to different boundaries to give you a wider floating zone. And they're all visual representations, really to sort of assist you in finding things that you want to find in a chart, things that make sense to you. In other words, if you have something that you can say, okay, I can now observe the accumulation area through this period here, and that makes sense to you, then you would use that tool. They're not indicators, you would use them as a tool. Now, why are they in there, and why don't I use them? Some of them I do use, like I like this grid at the background here. But I don't actually feel a need to use the floating zone 1 or 2 or anything like that, because gradually, as you get on and more experience, you can see exactly what you're looking for, which is the essence of what is in the chart. So why are they in there? Well, basically over the years as PAT was developed, I was asked by certain users to put in certain things, and that happened. There's very little change we ever really do now, but basically those things were put in at the request of users, and they stayed there because some people like to use them and keep them on, so they're there. But my advice, as I say, is to keep your chart as quiet as possible in terms of not overloading with all sorts of lines and moving out, all those sort of stuff that you want to put on charts or have a desire to put on charts. Resist that. Don't put them on. Keep it down to pure, simple information, accumulation, manipulation, profit release. Okay, now we talked about cycles, large cycles and mini cycles. Now, what I want to do now is actually mark up on the chart and show you a few things about the larger cycles and the small cycles. But before we do that, I'm just going to introduce you to these lines that I have set up here. You can see we've got a green one here, we've got a red one here, and the green one here. So basically we've got red and green lines that are drawn. Now Pat is drawing these automatically, and it's drawing them from these points here. You can see that whenever we have a red, like a red bar like this, let me just get those off and then come back again so we can focus down better on that. So whenever we have a red bar, so this is a red bar, this is a red bar. I'm not referring to blocks here. Whenever we have a green bar like this, and you can see another red bar here, I won't mark them all up because we can understand what we're doing. And then what Pat does is Pat will then work, as soon as it sees this, it will work this out, and then it will draw a line from this bar, which is the one after that. You can see here, the one after that, and the one after that, and it will extend those lines off into the future. So for example, you can see this line here, and you can see that this is then extended on right through into the future, and that line will keep on there until it's knocked off in a historic form. Now let me just show you what I mean by historic form. Get rid of those. and here you go to options, we can set the number of old alerts. So if I've currently got 8 in here, and the reason I've got 8 in because I want to talk to you about these this morning, but generally I wouldn't have that many. You can say, well, I'll take those down to 6. Now you can see what happens. You see these ones over here, I'll just mark it up so you can see. Better if I'm pointing to stuff on it. These ones have now disappeared. And that's because we're now only showing these last number of 6. I think there's 6 that I typed. So we're now only showing the last 6. And we could take that down to any number that we wanted to do. So for example, if you take that down, just another example there, take that down to 4. And you can see it gets rid of those, and you have the last 4 on there. But I'm going to put this back up to 8 because I want to talk to you about basically the cycles, and this will enable me to talk to you about that. Well, actually, I'll put those on in a moment. Let's talk about the cycles first. Okay, so when we're talking about cycles, you remember that we started off and we talked about, I'm going to get a circle on here, it'll be easy. There we go. Okay, so when we look at something like this, we're looking at an overall cycle. We're looking at the overall cycle there of the profit, of the accumulation, manipulation, and the profit release. I haven't actually drawn that in a very good position, so it should be really right the way through there, inside that one. Okay, so there we see that's the overall business maker, market maker's business model is there within that cycle. Get rid of those. I also talked to you about the smaller cycles, didn't I? Remember we talked about the smaller cycles and cycles within cycles, and we can see there, remember when we talk about the rising, so we can see the market on that one there, we can see another one here, we can see another one here, we can see another one here, okay, we can see another one here, nice bit of manipulation at the bottom there as well, we can see another one here, and yep, another one here. So we can see how we get these cycles within cycles, okay, another one over there, you can see there. So once you get used to looking at these, you can see that as the moves get underway, you can see we get these retraces, and now I want you to be thinking or focusing on exactly what these are. These are not retraces, such these are small cycles within the larger cycles. So we get these cycles in, and then we have the larger cycle that we see of going right the way through and then into the profit release. Okay. Let's now get back and pop on some more alerts so we can go through what I want to cover with you now. So we've got this back up to 8. Okay, now what I want to talk to you about now is, remember we covered the alert blocks, so let's get them on. So we talked about, sorry, the intent blocks are here, and we can see we've got the green one here, and we can see how later on that failed. Now, when are you going to be using these alert lines? In other words, these, in this case, this green line we can see. Now remember, this is drawn in, so by the time this red bar here closes off, and this bar starts here, that is when this line will be drawn. When that figure is, when that's all worked out, everything that's worked out in that area there, when that's worked out and that bar closes off, like I say here, we will then get that line extended forward from that point. In this case it's a green because obviously it's coming from a green. Okay, so where are we going to trade? What information does this provide us with? Well, clearly we can see straight away by looking at this that once we've got the line in, the market then comes off down here, and look what happens here. We can see how this acts as like a bit like a trampoline, a bit like a support area. You can call it a support area if you like. What's going on in here is obviously a little bit of manipulation, ready in anticipation for that breakdown, for that move, because we now see that with the intent block that we had, which green was, which has failed, and it's showing us that to be a false. So there's a little bit of movement around here, ready, and then eventually we get the market drop through and continue on down. Okay, so can you now see the next one? Have a look down, you can see we've got this one here. Now what I want you to do is notice the same effect. Now to keep in mind that you wouldn't actually have this red until the market got down to here. So this red one would not be visible at that point. We would only have the green one here as the market was going up. And you can see what happened. The market then dropped down underneath here, then lifted back up, came off here, and then drop down from there. Now I know this chart is actually getting a little bit messy now in terms of arrows, but I'm leaving these on for a while because I just want to show you how frequently this occurs. Now next thing is we see we get another one here appear here, and again we see the market sort of come back to that, but not right back to it this time, and then the market goes up from there. Now notice we've still got this one here that is still being drawn in. The market then goes up through this one here and then comes back down into the top of it, and then from there then starts to move up again. So you can see how these are being the market's reacting to these as the market then goes up. And then we can see again, look at this one here, we had this one was extended forward. Remember, these are here way before the market gets here. So right at this time, this line exists, even though the market's not anywhere near back up here. So you can be waiting to see what happens as the market comes back up. What happens? The market then comes right through here, then comes back down, comes off of this, and then settles up again. Okay, so where's our entry? Where do we actually get into this market? What is going to be pointing us in the right direction to say, yes, now this line is going to hold from here. This line now is a good time for us to trade. Well, let's get these off so we can start afresh. Okay, so the next thing I'd like to talk to you about is the jump bar. Now, I know we've briefly touched upon this, but now we're getting down to the chart. We need to understand what a jump bar is, what it looks like. But first off, let's go back through the concept of beliefs and understand what the jump bar actually tells us in the context of that. Now, let's suppose that we have, for example, a series of upward steps. Let's imagine, for example, that you are in a dark room. You can't see anything around you, but you sense there's some steps. You can feel those. So you're starting to walk up the steps. So up you go, one step, two step, three step, four step, and then suddenly, as you get to the next one, you step down, and the next step is down here. Now, clearly, you would be not only physically but mentally shaken about what had just occurred. Next time you climbed up those stairs, you'd be very, very cautious about that. Okay, now, and likewise, the same thing could happen. You could be going downstairs and thinking you're going downstairs, and then you could have an upstep now, and then you'd fall on top of that. So either way, quite a dramatic shift in you physically and mentally, from a mental perspective. And it would leave a mark on you. It would definitely leave an indelible mark on you, especially if you'd injured yourself or it was a painful experience. But it would leave a mark on you, and you would view steps from then on very differently that you couldn't view. And trading is very much like sometimes just in that dark room, walking up those steps or walking down those steps and waiting for something to happen after an accumulation phase, as it might be. So what Pat does is going to be a bit like a tool to find your way in the dark room, let us say. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look on the chart and we're going to find that step. We're going to find that stumble, that thing that dramatically changes your belief that you currently held about steps, either up or down. Okay, let's get over there now. Okay, we'll start on the far left-hand side of the chart, and we can see, just looking straight away here, although there's one just prior to this, but this is going to be the easiest one because of the numbers to show you on there. So we can see here that we've got what do we have? We have these beliefs stepping down through this period here. And we can see down, there's actually 4 in there, we can see stepping down. And then we have this bar here. Okay, so what's occurred at that point? What has Pat told us? What has the software told us at that particular point? Well, what it's told us is that there has been a dramatic shift in belief. There's been a rebirth. Those beliefs that were coming down through here, through this period down here, as the market came off down through that period, suddenly in this one bar here, these beliefs have shifted. They have literally taken out those preceding beliefs. And that is very, very important information. That piece of information tells you about the conditions or the condition of the minds, the collective mind, let us say, the masses that we are currently trading. Now, let's say just get those off again. I think it'd probably be better if we get a bit of, if we use maybe some highlighting through here. And we can see that what happens here is, look what's going on here. Now we can see we get an accumulation period here. Now the key thing about this is, this accumulation period occurs after here. So we've had this dramatic shift, and then the market goes into an accumulation period. That has you've got to ask the question, why? What's going on there? Clearly, a mental shift has taken place. Now, let's now look at this next one. Look at this one. Is that a jump bar? Well, It is, but it's not really the same as what we looked at preceding. And the reason why is because if you look at the preceding one, the beliefs were stepping down, and then there was the dramatic shift as the market jumped up. Whereas here, we can see that we're in a congestion area, and this one is really a move out of that congestion area, and that's all that one is. That's not a jump bar as such. Now, if we look a little bit later, what do we see over here? Now, that is a good definition of a jump bar, because clearly you can see the market was coming down first, and then we get this dramatic shift up. Now, remember, this all started right down here. By keeping, let's get rid of that one on there. We don't actually want that one. We want a line on there. This all started with this one here. So if we'd been keeping an eye on that, we would have been observing how the market was reacting. Now, of course, I'm just showing you all of these as the market's going up here, but really we're only interested in particular times. Now, let's have a look just at a few more. Just keep coming forward on these. So we get a bit of congestion area through here, and then we get a jump bar down. Now, do we get a jump bar down even though it's come from congestion? The answer is yes. Why? Because we can see that the market steps up first, and then the market jumps down, and that creates that dramatic shift again. That all-important dramatic shift in the minds of traders. The beliefs are suddenly shifting, and Pat is showing us that that is what's occurring, and that is great information for us later on, especially if we're then trading in conjunction with our intent blocks. Okay, so we see the same sort of thing again. Now, there's another one you can see here. We get this one here. Okay. Now, what occurs on this? What's happening on here when we consider the others? Well, clearly down here, we've got a sustained period of the down where the beliefs were stepping down, stepping down, stepping down. Whereas here, we got pretty much the same, but this this jump bar, when it jumped up, didn't really clear the belief bars coming down. Now here, you can see coming down through here, by the time that jump bar came in, it cleared everything in that area. It cleared it right through. Here, it didn't do that. The market is coming down. Yes, I know I'm overdrawing on this now, but that's the best way to do it at the moment. But we can see the market's coming down, but by the time then the jump bar comes up, it doesn't clear all of that congestion area. Let me put a little circle on there. It doesn't clear all of those beliefs coming down on there. So that's certainly not as strong as the type of jump bar that takes out the preceding beliefs in one swift move, as it were. Now, have a look up here. And we can see this area through here. Again, we can see this is an accumulation period going through here. And then we get that jump bar down. We can see. Now, is this a jump bar down? Yes, it is a jump bar from congestion, but it hasn't taken out. It sort of kicked things off, but it hasn't had that dramatic shift from something that's going up to something that's going down. It's a jump bar out of congestion. Valuable information, yes, but it's not the same. Okay, now let's move on from there. Okay, so then we see the next area, and we can see another area of accumulation through here. Then we see a drop bar down here, which is really confirming what we're seeing here, isn't it? We can see where we're getting this. It's confirming this down here. So these jump bar downs are really showing to us that there's a change in the market. There's a change going on. So every time the market goes up, we get this drop back down. And then what happens is, of course, we get our green intent block, and then we can see later on that becomes a invalid or a false intent block. I hope you can see now by building up a picture, by building up this information and watching what Pat is telling you, when you get an intent block like this, you can sort of be pre-warned as to how that intent block is highly likely to play out based upon the preceding information. That's why I said to you it's important to pay attention to the previous action that occurs, the previous price action, the previous beliefs, everything that's going on prior to you seeing an intent block. And certainly when you see an intent block, if you haven't been looking, then go back and quickly run through and see if you can find those jump bars out of the accumulation areas, which is giving you some clue of what's going on. Now, of course, we get in our pivot line here that we go through here. Remember, we're calling those a pivot lines, but it's not exactly the same thing as a pivot that you would find in a conventional charting package. And then we can see that the market gets down to this area here, and then what do we see? This big jump down, and sort of the whole story now has been played out right back from where it started, when we see first off we had these jump bars moving up, and then we started getting them coming down coming down, coming down. We then got our intent block, and then we got the kickoff, and then the whole thing settled down from the intent block. And if we just do a quick check on there, pull up our 90 pips so we can see how far the market goes. There we go, from the high. And now we can see we've got, once again, a very nice sustained move down for our 90 pips. Okay, now what I'm going to do now is pretty much be quiet, but I'm going to be drawing on the chart so you can sort of follow along what I'm thinking about and pick these out for yourself. Okay, so what have we seen by going through that simple exercise? Well, what we've seen is we understand that how the market literally steps up, how it's like being in that dark room when we have those steps. Keep that in mind. Now, another thing I want you to keep in mind is that although it's a dark room and you can't see in there, when you're looking back at the chart, I want you to trade what you see, not what you think. I don't want you to think about, oh, the market has got to go to this point here. Oh, the market has got to go to that point there. This high has got to be breached or likely to be breached. If you are doing that, you are forward speculating and you are becoming hooked in to the market maker's manipulation. So in other words, the chart is forever generating meaning for you. Now the market makers are generating meaning, they're creating those beliefs about you. Sorry, not about you, they're creating those beliefs in you, not you specifically, but the masses, as it were. What Pat is doing is enables you to pull away from that, to observe those beliefs that are being manipulated, like we see those beliefs stepping up, and then we observe that very quick takeout and that shift. And it's that shift that we're interested in. So by looking at the chart and trading what we see, not what we feel, okay. Now, again, we're very careful here because I'm not asking you to trade a pattern. I'm asking you to trade the understanding. So you're looking at what's behind there. So we see the jump bar, and the jump bar is to a large degree is the facade, isn't it? You see that image jump down on the facade. You need to understand is that piece behind. What's happened in the minds of those traders? What's happened to their current beliefs? Say, for example, the market was stepping up, and then suddenly we had this what's happened to them, what's going through their minds. And sometimes you'll get this several times happen before a large move occurs. And it's like the market makers are showing their hand. They're not liking to, but they're sort of showing their hand that that's ultimately the direction of the market's going to go down, not going to go in. And we can see how that happened when we looked at it earlier, where it happened several times through that period before the market then got into the sustained move down there. So sometimes you'll get those many different signals as you go through. So just looking back at the chart now, you see those blocks, you can see how things are stepping up. Now what I want you to do is relate those back to the alert lines. Let's just get that off there and put that back on. So now what I want you to do is to relate those moves back to these alert lines that are put in, and so you can see how the jump bars act in relationship to those. Now, of course, the best way to learn this information is by doing it live, is by seeing it come forward. But it's all very well looking back at these charts like this, but you need to be able to recognize this as it occurs so that you can then enter into the market, obviously, and profit from that information, which is why we have an exact tool to allow you to do this built right into Pat. We call it the Trading Trainer, and that's exactly where we're going next. Well, welcome to our trader training section. Now, when you're learning any new skill, there is obviously a degree of training that's involved. And trading is no different, and certainly using the PAT software is no different. Or even if you were using your own software, you would still need some degree of training to enable you to become confident and competent in what you're actually doing. Now, training really, when you think about it, is really a way of attaining competence. So what we think about is we start up on a new project, we don't know anything about it, we go through learning the steps or the rules, let us say, in our case, the market makers rules, we learn the foundation of it, and it's all very good having that foundation, and that's great, and we must have that when we're starting out learning a new skill. But then we've got to turn that into a competence. We've got to become competent as a trader, so that when we actually approach our trading screens, we know, not we think, we know that over time we're going to produce a profit. And that is what you know, that's competence, having competence in what you are actually doing. Okay, that's very different to having confidence. Okay, and that sort of sits with it, but competence in what you're doing is the most important thing. Now, when you're, like I say, when you're looking at any new skill, you need this degree of training. Now, training, a lot of people will go through training when they're looking at the market charts, is by going back historically, and they'll look at charts, and now come forward, and then they'll, you know, go back historically, and they'll try and find patterns, repeating things that bring meaning to them, and then they'll try and build up those things in their mind to the point where they can then trade live with those. And we went through that with the cycle type of thing on there, where the trader will get into a cycle, develop a strategy, and then you'll go live with it, etc. So that basically the circle goes around a continual strategy development. And the reason why that occurs is because the mind never becomes comfortable. They never become, let's say that the mind never accepts it as a workable solution. And the way to trading success, the way to move forward on a continuous basis, is to have that workable solution, not only physically there, but also mentally accepted. It's got to be mentally accepted within you that what you do is successful and you are successful. And that will enable you to then go forward and trade on a daily basis. Okay, so training. Now, what I've done with Pat software is built directly into it what I call the Trading Trainer. Now, what this enables you to do is to literally test your skills. So you can go to any chart, any time frame, and you can start to come forward and test your own skills. But you're testing them in such a way that you're forced to make trading decisions that you're then going to have to stick with. Okay, and you can already start to see the benefit of this, because if you're forced to make a trading decision and you know that you've got to stick with that decision, you've got to think about what you're doing as you come forward. So let's have a quick look at our Trading Trainer and basically explain how this works. Okay, now going to the chart now, you can see I've got this set up, and what I've done is I've just scrolled back. It's the 23rd of the 3rd. There's no particular reason why I've gone to that. It's just I've just scrolled back, and we can see a couple of red intent blocks that we've got lined up here. And it's just an average chart by any stretch of the imagination. Also, you can see that I've put back on the flooding zone 2, which are the 3 yellow lines that you see here. And I'll change the colour of these again. I think these show up a little bit better on the video, the actual yellow. But as I say, that's just immaterial. That's just an aesthetic appearance, if you like. Okay, so what I've done is I've scrolled back, and now I'm just going to have a look at the trading trainer. Now, if you go to options up here, I'll just show you here first off. You can see down here we have trading trainer settings. Now, the settings are how many seconds should the screen pause after each move? 3 seconds. How many bars should the screen move after each pause? 3 bars. Now, what that means is every 3 seconds the chart is going to advance by 3 bars. Okay. Now, you can set this to any setting you want. So when you're starting off, you might want to have a slow one, so you can sort of really think about it bar by bar. Now, I wouldn't recommend bar by bar, but you know, it's up to you entirely what you want to do. You can tailor this for your own training, and that's what this is about. It's about you as an individual. Okay, so once you've got those settings in, all you have to do then, you can see, and I've got this little icon up here, which looks like a barbell. You know, I don't know why the program is that, but it's a barbell there. So we're working out, we're training anyway. So all we have to do is click on that, and you can see now that the chart just advanced then, just as I did that. And again, there we go there. So there you can see every 3 seconds, that chart is just moving forward and looking there, and we'll have to be looking at that, and then we'd be making training decisions. Okay, I'm going to pause it there. Didn't quite pause that quick enough. Okay, so we got our green, as it were, and what we'd then would be obviously making a trading decision about that. Now I can see from this green here, if I click on the green, I can see that the market broke out the top of the floating zone 2, period 2 here, retraced, and then started to get into an up move. Now I'd be certainly very comfortable about buying this market at this stage. Why? Well, I can see that the market has come from the accumulation. Let me just get a screen draw on so we can go through this. So I can see we've got an accumulation period through here. I can also see that the market then broke out the bottom down through here, which is indicating possibility of a sell. The market started to move back up, but there wasn't a retrace and then a drop off, so that the market didn't give us a continuation at this point. What we had seen at this point was when we got the green. So we got the green here, the intent block. We can see the market's green after that. That gives us the intent. Historically we've got accumulation area. We've now got this bit of a retrace back down here, and then looks like the market then gets settled in to an up move underway. Okay, so that's what I'd be looking for. That's the important stuff I'm looking for there, and that's what I'd be trying to spot as the market comes forward. So we'll get those off now, and then we'll start again, go up to our little icon there, and we'll start off. Okay, so we can see the market's moving forward. Okay, so it's all looking good. Market's come back into the floating zone area. Right, okay, well, it's dropped out the bottom here, so a little bit cautious about that. Okay, we've got another green, so that reinforces, and another green. That's great. So the whole trade is playing out great as it was. Now, I'm just going to pause this here because I want to explain to you, when you saw that red appear, remember that the red would not have appeared until this bar had closed. So historically you look back and it looks great. Oh, well, that's a red right at the top. But remember, they would not have occurred until this point here, because we are interested in the sequence of events that take place within those three bars. And that's why we draw that line off, that alert line. Remember the pivot line that comes out from that second bar, as it were. And okay, it's not highlighted here because obviously we've scrolled back, and those pivot lines are at the live edge of the chart. Okay, so let's just click and carry on again with the training trainer, so we can see we can go forward again. Now at this stage, what I'm just going to pause it again because I want to explain something to you. Now, to my mind of thinking, what's happened here is we've gone through the floating zone is here. You can see, let me just get a marker on so you can see. You can see now that we've had this green. It hasn't reacted with further prices, and this bar here has dropped out the bottom of the floating zone, so it's got a complete change. It's like a complete lane change, if you like, and on a highway. Something's not quite right about this now, because it's completely going the other way. It's gone right the way through the zone, and we've had that intent block. So I'd be thinking now that there's something not quite right about this, and I'd certainly, if I was long in this market at this stage, I'd be certainly thinking about moving a stop right up, taking some profits, and waiting to see how things develop from there. Okay, let's get that off again, and let's click forward on our trading trainer. You can see we're going forward a little bit more, but it looks like getting a bit of congestion, doesn't it? And that's congestion, meaning the accumulation, of course. Stop there. Okay, now the reason I've stopped there is I just want to again highlight that. We can see that we've got the accumulation period there, so I'm a little bit intrigued about that as to what could be going on there. Let's see, we've got another dropout now. So in other words, we had this first one that came through and dropped out the bottom of the floating zone there, and now I've got this second one that's come out after accumulation. This is accumulation period running through here. So now I'm quite cautious about this market continuing up at this stage. So I'm looking for sort of maybe a sell opportunity to come along. But certainly I've got an open mind. I mean, we could get another green here. This is the beauty of the trading trainer. You're able to come forward this way and do your training in this way, which is absolutely superb. Believe you me, you can't remember this stuff. So if you go back a month, you know, and you could start coming forward, you can't remember where that market went. So you really are getting in and forcing yourself to make those trading decisions. Okay, let's get the green off and then go back up and activate our trading trainer again. Okay, we see we're coming forward a little bit more. Looking like you see the floating zone is sort of coming down, starting to move down a little bit now. We're getting a little bit more accumulation running through. That's quite a good accumulation area. Okay, we've got another drop down through the bottom there. Okay, let's carry on forward a little bit more, see what's coming out. Okay, very good accumulation area. Let's just stop this here a moment and just put a marker on here so we can see what we're talking about. I mean, look at this period running pretty much through here where we're getting this accumulation through here. So that's looking very, very good for the possibility of a great move from there. Back up there, activate our trainer. Coming forward. What we're looking for is that maybe that intent block. We're looking for that all-important. We can already see, by the way, let me just stop that there. We can already see that this intent block at the top here, this green here, we can already see it's looking false, looking very, very false indeed. Because why? Because look, all this is actually below the intent bar. So that in itself is telling us that this market, maybe this is definitely a false intent block here, in which case the market could indeed be heading down. So again, back up to our trading trainer. We're going forward, carrying on. You see I've got this set up at the speed that I think is applicable for what we're doing here. Obviously I can't have it going very slow for the video, otherwise we'll be going on for hours. Aha, right, stop that there. Okay, we've now got our intent block. Now, remember this, we would have seen this obviously before this bar here. Let me just get a marker on again. Okay, we'd have seen this intent block well before this bar here. Obviously, we'd have seen it as soon as this bar closed at this point here. Now, so what we sort of know at this point is, when we're looking back, we now know this was false, don't we? We now know this was an excellent accumulation area, and now we've got the intent block down. Can you see how everything's added up? It's all added up. It's all come together, and now, hopefully, now we can see where the market maker's intent truly lie. Let's get rid of that and come forward again and see what we've got. Okay, all looking good. Okay, a little bit more accumulation going through there. Still not reacting yet. Aha, there we go. Out the bottom of the floating zone again. Now, that's interesting here. Now, let's just see what happens here, because let's just get the screen drawn on here. You know, you can see we've dropped out the bottom of the floating zone through here. The market has then come down through this period here, now retraced up to here. Okay, is it going to drop through on here and give us a further push on? Let's have a look and see. No, a little bit up on there. We're getting high activity area. Market's gone back out of the top. Yeah, but we're looking with intent, remember. Oh, and there we go. Down she goes and settles off into the down move. Okay, so that's a classic example of how you would use the trading trainer to train your brain to detect everything that we're looking for. And believe you me, that once you've done this for about a week, you go through and you just keep doing this charts on here, your brain will become completely attuned to what you need to be spotting. And so what will happen, and which is a very, very exciting process, I can tell you, what will happen is that you'll be just looking at a chart, not really even thinking too much about what's going on, and you get suddenly that sense of knowing, aha, that this market is going to go down. well, this market's going to go up. And you sort of know this intrinsically. Now, why do you know this? You know this obviously from looking at the chart, but more importantly, you know this because your mind, your subconscious mind has logged in that sense of knowing. It understands what you are doing as a process. So rather than your eyes, as it were, physically looking at this chart and saying, okay, at this point here, I recognize this point and that's why I'm going to trade, more it becomes a global sense of understanding. It's a bit like, I suppose, when you're learning off, you're going on practicing to be a carpenter or whatever, you don't know which tool to pick up at first to do a particular job. But gradually, as your skill progresses, so you become proficient, and so you don't think about which tool you need. You sort of see a particular mark on the wood, or you've got to do a particular type of cut, and you intrinsically know which tool you go for. So you don't think about the tool, you just simply put your hand out, reach up and take that tool. And this is very much what we're aiming for with the trading trainer. By training your brain in this way, you are in effect giving yourself the same ability to know which tool to pick up at the time. In our case, it's not a tool as such. It's because what we're doing is picking up that understanding of saying, okay, now is the time that we should be trading. Okay, now you can see we've let the trading trainer carry on, and it's going through, and it's obviously just coming forward as we're going, and that enables us again. Let's just stop it there and have a quick look at what's happened. I meant to stop it actually while I was just talking through that bit, but it doesn't matter. It's gone on. Okay, so we see now we've got the green down here, the green intent block, and we saw the market actually come out the top of the lanes. So we saw it changed lanes, didn't it? So we got the accumulation period running through here. We've got a very nice accumulation period running through here, and then we've got the green. Okay, so we've got the green one coming up here. That's all looking good now on that. We get this, and we also get, the market starts to retrace a little bit, so it goes up. The market comes back down. Is this going to be our up move now? Is this now where we're going to get something? Is the market going to get above this point here and then start off into the up move? No, it doesn't occur. We get the intent block heading down. Okay, now we've got to think, okay, the market's really changed the lane, hasn't it? When you think about it, it's come right the way down. It's now pushed its way out the bottom here. We've got this lift back up, and we've got this retrace down here for this possible sell at this point here. And I'd be quite keen to sell the market around this point here. I can see the intent block. It's all looking good. It's looking good for coming down. But of course, that doesn't work out. In this case, certainly, almost certainly, be stopped out. But here we see the market then breaks out through the top of it, and it's like it's given that dramatic change, as it were. Now we've got to ask ourselves, let me just get rid of these markers so we can see. Now we've got to ask ourselves, after that move, what did this period through here contain? What did it contain? Well, first off, we initially thought that it was buys, didn't we? Because we could see the intent bar out of here. And so we thought it was buys on there. Okay, and the market did actually go up and sort of confirm that. But then we got this down intent bar, and then we got the down move there. And thought, okay, well, now I'm not so sure. Maybe this was the sucker's move. Maybe that was the manipulation of the market going up to lead people in the wrong direction, as it were. And then later on, as we say, as the market comes through here, this period here, we can say, in actual fact, this period now was the sucker's move. It was the manipulation move. Now, again, the most important factor here is in this area here, accumulation. We've got to work out that when we see something like this, what's behind it? What is that accumulation there? And are we then looking at a profit release? Okay, now let's just go forward again and stick on that trading trainer again. See what happens. Okay, I'm nice and quiet here now, just watching and seeing how things play out. It's exactly what you would be doing. Okay, we've got our accumulation period building up. We can see that again, can't we? Let me just stop that just for a second here, and incidentally just get this on here so we can just see these moves. These are 90 pip moves, so make no mistake. These are substantial moves that we can get out of here, get substantial pips out of here. Let's get that off of there. Get back onto our trading trainer. Okay, just watch this now as it comes forward. This is exactly what you're going to be doing, exactly how you're going to be learning the skill of reading exactly what's going on. It was a quite dramatic jump there. It wasn't a jump in price, it was simply a rescaling of the chart, because you can see that the market's gone quite flat through this whole chart period, and that's sort of, you know, the scale of the chart has altered. So that long move completely playing out right the way through from this. Let's get a marker on there again so we can see this long move playing out right the way through from here. And we had another sort of, well, no, we didn't actually. There was nothing actually came out the bottom of there at all, right the way through. So that really pretty much played out all the way, right the way through. Okay, we now see we've got the intent block at the top here. Okay, and we can see that we've got this drop through the bottom. So the intent block has sort of literally taken it right the way through the floating zone. So let's continue on now with there. That's looking like now we want to be looking out for a sell opportunity. Okay, there we go. There's a retrace. There we go, down she goes. So let me just get the retrace on there for you so you can see there what I'm talking about. So we've got our accumulation period here. We've got our intent block. We see the market comes back down, breaks out of there, lifts back up. And there we go, confirmation of the move. And now we're the other side of the floating zone. So we're now looking, this was a down move. Let's get rid of the markers and get back on our trading trainer. Whoops, that jumped right the way forward there for some reason. That was me, my mistake. Okay, so there we are, right the way through the move there. Let me just get a marker on there. You can see, yep, 90 pips yet again, right the way down from the top there. Get that off from there. Okay, so I think pretty much you get the idea from there what we're talking about and how that all sort of works. Now, just briefly, what I want to touch on now is the 90 pips tool. Okay, now the 90 pips tool. And just before I get into that, I'm just going to get a marker on here to show you where I'm going to be pointing so you can see. Now, first off, we've got these three icons here. You can see a single line, there's three lines, and there's another three lines here. And you can see how this one is these three lines are wider set apart. Now, these are the 90 pips tool, the TFT full tile, which is the trade finder tool, and a single line there. So let's just get those off and just show you what I'm talking about. If I click on this, it will give me a single line. I can then drag this to anywhere I want to see. Now, the use of this might be, for example, say I've recorded, you can see after we can see this, we would have had an alert line that went forward from here. But afterwards, as the market goes on, of course, we lose that alert line because obviously it's dealing with the last 4, 6 or 8, however many you're setting up to record. So this could be historically, but obviously this could be a point that I've got some interest in. So what I would do on that example, I would simply place a line on there. I would right click it. I'd lock it in a position, and if I didn't want to see it, I'd actually knock it out as ghosted, so it just sort of sat right on the background of the chart. But what I could do is actually put an alert on here. I actually click on this here, and then it says alert me if the current price gets closer than, I could say, or 2 pips to that, and I click OK, and you can see the window opens at the bottom showing the alert. I can get rid of that. Now that's gone. Now what Pat's doing is now just monitoring the market, and should the market then get back up to here, and say as the market came, so I've sent that up at this point here, the market then started to move back up to here. As it got to within the number of pips I'd set there, I would get an audible and visual alert that the market had moved back to that price there. And also what I can do is I can also add a note onto that, so you can see that if I put a test in there, for example, if I hover over that, I can just be quickly reminded of why I actually put that line on in the first place as well. So we'll just get rid of that. We don't need that, so delete that out. Okay, next line we can see, we know about this, we've gone through this. This really is our trade finder tool. It sort of lines up well with the floating zone 2 there, enables you to sort of manually track this around and find that congestion if you need to do that. Okay, so that's that one there. And then the third one here, which is the 90 pips tool, which is what we're looking for the market. It's the range, it's what we're looking for, it's how we get our maximum number of pips out of moves. And you can see that just how useful this tool is, just by simply using it as a marker to mark out where these 90 pip runs start from and finish from. You can see from here. So once you've got this on and you were in this market trading, you'd be thinking about taking some profits at around this level here. Okay, and then we move on. You can see we just move this around. Okay, now almost to the 90 pips there. You can see that? Look at that, almost there. Right again. Let's just mark it up. right away from here. Again, you'd be cautious about that and thinking about that. Okay, that's gone 90 pips. And then you see, obviously, the intent block. And then from here down here, you can see there's your 90 pips tool down there. And this is such a repetitive thing. Let me see. I'm not going to go through the charts because it's just eating up video time. But this is such a repetitive process, and you need to go through. And as you're going through, doing your trader training with Pat, have this 90 tool up so you can literally drag this along with you and follow these 90 pip moves right the way through, because then again is going to be training your brain to not only pick up the moves and read the market and read the cycle, the accumulation, manipulation, and profit release. You're also going to be able to mark out the profit release cycle and know when you've got the maximum number of pips, or likely the maximum number of pips from that move. Okay, now we've gone through the training. We've looked at how the trader training works. We've looked at the 90 pips tool, and you sort of have everything now encapsulated in what we do. Now, of course, there's going to be what I call the nuances. They're little things that come along and you think, oh, I wonder what that is, or I wonder what this is. Now, of course, I can't cover all of those on a DVD training because they're going to be different for everybody. So that's why you have me, as it were. You've got email. You can shoot me across an email. We can talk about things you're doing, how you're learning this and going forward. So really, you know, those little tiny things, or those what I call the nuances, as were, they're the things that we sort of work together on. Now, there's one major thing that I want to talk to you about now, and that is being lost. Now, I've been trading the markets for close on 20 years. Now, okay, I'm semi-retired now, and I don't do that much now, but that's by the way. The fact of the matter is that even after my level of skill, my level of years that I've been in the market, there are times when I become lost. I look at a chart and I think, you know, what's going on? Where in the phases are they? So, and that's the question: is where are you in accumulation, manipulation, or profit release? Now, if they are in one of those three phases, and I can see which of those three phases they're in, then I can pretty much make money by default. That's how it will work, and that's exactly how it will work for you. However, if you're looking at a market and you can't see what phase they're in, you can't understand where they're going, how are you going to make money? The answer to that is you're not. You are not going to make money unless it's by a random choice, let us say. That's the only way you're going to make money. So you must never trade while you have that feeling of being lost. It's an unpleasant feeling. You could be lost anywhere, and physically lost, it's not a pleasant experience. And when you're looking at the markets, you can have that feeling. Now, it will get less and less, and it really will. It'll become quite a rare thing to have that feeling, that lost feeling. There'll be times you just simply don't want to trade as such. It's not that you don't feel completely lost, but you're just not comfortable doing what you're doing, so you don't do anything. But it's very important to recognize those feelings within yourself. When you don't know, when you're asking the questions, is this accumulation? And you don't know, is this manipulation? You don't know. Is this the profit? You don't know. If you don't know those things, then don't trade. Simple solution. Do not trade. You only trade when you have the sense of knowing, because that way you are building even more confidence in yourself. So when you don't know, there's something in you that's saying, I don't know where this market is, I don't know what's going on here, then don't do it. Don't trade at that point. So wait for the sense of knowing. The sense of knowing comes from experience. Experience will come from training, and training will come from the little training tool that we have in there that enables you to go through on a daily basis and basically build up that level of skill that you need. Okay, well, this is the end of the DVDs. This is, you have the entire foundation. You know everything there is to know about accumulation. You know everything about manipulation. You know everything about the profit release. You know how the market maker's business model works, how it functions. Now, I'm putting in the Pat software this that you can see how I map this all out, how I mark this out, all intent blocks, the floating zone, the simple tools that I use to analyze and work out the market maker's business model. And that is your entire goal now. That's all you have to do, is work out where in the market maker's business model, where is that current model going? We always know where it's going, but in what phase is the market? You wait for the correct phase, and then you trade that phase. So, like I say, we're going to bring this video to a close now, and certainly this will be the last video you'll see of me on these DVDs.